So here we are, conflict, a spirit gift. And she writes, conflict grows out of challenges that are presented by spirit. It is a gift meant to help us move forward. Okay. It is a gift to help us, it is a gift meant to help us move forward. It is through conflict that we gain knowledge of ourselves and learn new situations for using our own gifts. Conflict is a wake-up call sent by spirit to remind us of the purpose or, okay, what's going on here? Of the purpose. Peace out to everyone who's joined, by the way. Peace out to everybody who's in the chat. So we're saying conflict is a wake-up call sent by spirit to remind us of the purpose we are here to fulfill. In an indigenous context, it is seen as a blessing. It should not be nurtured, it should be listened to, and proper steps should be taken to address the spirit behind the conflict. Two humans together are always prone and vulnerable to some form of conflict or another. Without conflict, everything is going to look pretty boring. But dwelling in conflict will make everything pretty sour. So there is a need for a constant balancing, and the ingredient for that balancing is ritual. Ritual acknowledges that the relationship of two people is an energy higher than the two of them simply added together. It is something so big that their intellect and their own dexterity cannot handle crises that arise without the intervention of something ritualistically grounding. What she's talking about there with regard to conflict reminds me of the whole dialectic thing of historical materialism. So I learned this from Kwame Nkrumah and Walter Rodney and some of these other people. They talk about this this dialectics idea, which I believe they kind of got from Karl Marx. But basically, the idea is that everything is in the process of change. This is kind of like a scientific. Everything is in the process of change. Everything's changing all the time. Nothing is just still. Everything is changing, and the process of change involves elements or different entities kind of conflicting with one another, or having some kind of friction between each other. It's out of that friction that all growth, all new things come about. Amilcar Cabral had a really good analogy or metaphor, I don't know which one, but to explain dialectics, where he talks about how a seed in the soil goes through all kinds of this kind of conflict and friction. First of all, the sprout within the seed has to break through the shell of the seed. Then that little sprout has to go up through the soil, gravity and so forth, to get up above into the air. Then, that plant must withstand all the elements from the sunshine, the rain, the wind, the cloud, the frost, or whatever it might be, to be able to open up and so forth, and so on and so on. Every single stage of that plant's life involves some kind of conflict. And so our historical materialists, dialectic, socialists and Marxists teach us that is also the same for social societies. In society, there is always conflict. And when they talk about contradictions quite a lot, what they're talking about is those are the places where there is conflict. So class conflict is one of the main ones. Conflict between the different social classes, middle class, capitalists, proletariat, and so forth. But then there's also conflict here, bringing it back to what Sobonfu Somé is talking about. She's talking about just on an individual basis. Conflict is basically everywhere. And she's bringing she's focusing us on ritual. She's saying, actually, ritual is what we need to do to handle these conflicts, not always constantly being in conflict, but using ritual. So what does she mean by ritual? Let's talk a little bit about this. When conflict shows up, we may think that the best way to deal with it is to adopt an antagonistic stance toward the other person. But actually, it is best to come together and tell spirit, quote, "We've heard the words that you sent to us. We may not know what to make of them. They are very hard, very painful for us to deal with. But we understand that it is through this trial that we will find our gifts and our wisdom. Next time, if you can make it a little less hard, it will be really helpful, because this one took a huge toll on our relationship. But we are listening and we are willing to get beyond our resistance." Okay, so it's like a coming at conflict with a spirit of openness and a willingness to learn, and not trying to not trying to get into an argument or a fight, but looking to kind of learn. This is very, I mean, I'm married, and I've been married 7 years now, and this is we're kind of learning this lesson gradually about how to handle conflict, because some of the best breakthroughs that we have as a couple, and some of the best breakthroughs that I have in my knowledge of my wife and of myself, and even of my children, comes through the conflicts, comes through the crisis moments. And it's really down. I'm interested to hear where she'll go with this, actually. So conflict usually comes when things start to stagnate, when our ego and controlling self starts to take over our relationship. Conflict is a notice that spiritual energy is being stopped and needs to move. Okay. In the village, people are encouraged to deal with conflict instead of running away from it. If they are not able to deal with it, it must be opened to the community. Let's say, for instance, that something is really bothering a woman in the village, but she is unable to speak to her husband about it. She can let her women's circle know. Quote, "This is what's aching me," unquote, and the women might speak to her husband. If he doesn't respond, all the family members, both the woman's and the man's, will be called together. If no solution is found, then the whole village will be alerted. By then, you know that it's really late. Things have gotten pretty bad. It's no longer a couple problem, it's a village problem. The couple needs to stand back and let the village deal with it. This process, with the whole community trying to help, makes it impossible for the husband to come back with serious anger at his wife for telling for telling everyone that things aren't working. And reaching out to a larger community for a solution makes it impossible for the problem to continue. This is so practical, it's so basic, isn't it? Like, yeah, it takes a village to do everything, not just raise a child. So yeah, it should be a case of when there's a problem in a couple, they can go to their everybody should be able to go somewhere for some arbitration or some accountability on both our parts. And here she refers to the women's circle. That all goes back to the initiation, that when males and females are initiated, they're initiated with their people, fellow males, fellow females, but then they stay together throughout life. They're always part of that same cohort. Brilliant idea. Nothing like this exists here in the West, apart from maybe through school, you might say. You're in the same grade as me at school and so forth, but it doesn't have anywhere near the same import. And then that whole point about taking it to the wider family. I've seen this happen in my family a little bit, actually. So there was a conflict once, some kind of conflict between my parents some time ago, years and years and years ago. And I remember that we had some relatives over from Uganda who were just happened to be over. And they came along with various members of our family who are in London. And it was weird for me to see, because basically my dad had said some things which he shouldn't have been saying to my mum. And basically he had to sit there and explain himself to everyone. These people were younger than him, by the way. But it was like he had to sit there and basically give an answer to himself. And I was just like, I've never seen my dad have to answer to anyone, frankly. But that's the kind of thing that you obviously need, is that kind of community, and that's a practical. Because what happens too much, because it's so everything is so individual now. Really, people couple off and go off and get married and whatnot. Often they move far away from their family, far away from their friends, and so forth. And for me, that's always a red flag. Whenever I hear about couples who are they have no family nearby, no friends really nearby, I'm just like, what's going to happen when the ish hits the fan? What are you going to do? Where are your people? Who's going to help you?